We have listened to hundreds of stories on this channel, but the one you're about to hear today left our whole team unable to sleep after we first heard it. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Type your city, your country, right in the comments. We read every single one and we pray over them by name, by location, believing God for breakthrough in your home. The testimony you about to hear is a warning, and we believe someone watching right now needs to hear it today. Please, don't scroll past this video. Watch it to the end, because everything that was revealed on this video concerns you. And if it touches you the way it touched us, share it with someone you love, because you never know whose life this was meant to reach. Now listen, as I begin sharing the experience. My name is George Jason. I am 54 years old. Before I tell you what happened to me, I need you to understand something. I was not the kind of man who believed in visions or spirits or angels. I believed in hard work. I believed in providing for my family. I believed in staying busy enough that I never had to think too deeply about eternity. Church was somewhere I went on holidays, when it was convenient, when nothing else was pulling at my time. I want to be honest with you from the very beginning of this testimony, because what I am about to share with you changed everything I thought I understood about life, about death, and about what is coming to this world. It started with what felt like a small thing, a cough that would not go away, a tiredness that sat on my chest like a stone. My wife kept telling me to see a doctor, and I kept telling her I was fine, that it was nothing, that I did not have time to sit in waiting rooms. Within a matter of weeks, that small thing became something the doctors could not control. My body grew weaker every single day. I remember the last conscious days of my illness as a blur of hospital lights, quiet voices around my bed, and my wife's hand holding mine so tightly I could feel her fear passing into my skin. Then one evening, everything went quiet. My breathing slowed. The machines beside me made a different sound than before, and then there was nothing, no pain, no weight, no fear, just silence. But that silence did not last long, because what happened next is something I have struggled for months to find the words to explain to you. I felt myself rise. Not my body, because I could see my body still lying there on the hospital bed, still and pale, with doctors and nurses moving around it in a hurry I could no longer feel urgency about. I was above all of it, weightless, calm in a way I had never once felt while I was alive on this earth. There was no panic in me, there was no fear, only an overwhelming peace, so complete and so total that it felt like I had been carrying a burden my entire life without knowing it. And suddenly that burden had been lifted clean off of me. And then I saw him. He appeared in front of me clothed in light so radiant that at first I could not look directly at him, the way you cannot stare into the sun. His form was tall, robed in white that seemed to move like liquid, like the fabric itself was alive with brightness. I did not need anyone to tell me what he was. I knew, in the deepest part of my spirit, that I was standing in the presence of an angel of the living God. He spoke to me, and his voice was not loud, but it moved through me like something ancient and unshakable, filling every corner of my being at once. You have been brought here to witness what is coming, so that you may warn my people. I want you to understand something about that moment. I did not feel worthy. I did not feel prepared. I was just a man who had spent his life chasing small things. And here I was standing before a messenger of heaven being told that I had been chosen to witness something. I tried to speak, to ask why me, but before words could even form, the world around me changed completely. I found myself suspended above the earth, looking down at it the way you would look at a globe spinning slowly beneath your feet, except this was no model, no toy. This was the actual earth, alive and breathing, oceans glinting under sunlight, clouds drifting lazily across continents. For a moment everything appeared peaceful, ordinary, the way the world always looks from a distance, calm, blue, untroubled. Then it began to shake. It did not happen slowly. It happened the way an earthquake begins, without warning, without mercy. I watched the ground beneath entire nations tremble. I watched skyscrapers sway like reeds in a storm. I watched governments scramble to hold on to power that was slipping through their fingers like sand. I saw leaders standing behind podiums, their faces pale, their voices cracking as they tried to calm populations who no longer trusted a single word coming out of their mouths. I watched financial markets around the world collapse in what felt like moments. Numbers on screens crashed downward violently, and I saw people in suits, people who had spent their entire lives building wealth, staring at their computer screens in disbelief as decades of security evaporated before their very eyes. Digital systems that the whole world had come to depend on, Banking networks, communication grids, the invisible threads holding modern life together, began failing without warning, plunging entire cities into confusion. I saw unrest breaking out in major cities, streets I recognized from news broadcasts filled with smoke and chaos. I saw fear on the faces of ordinary people, mothers pulling their children close, shop owners boarding up windows, police forces overwhelmed and outnumbered. I saw military conflicts intensifying in regions that had been simmering with tension for years, tanks moving across borders, soldiers being deployed in numbers I had never imagined, tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. Economic uncertainty spread across continents like a plague with no cure. I watched currencies lose their value overnight. I watched entire nations that had once seemed unshakable in their prosperity brought low, their citizens standing in long lines for basic necessities, their leaders offering explanations that satisfied no one. And in the middle of all of this chaos, I saw humanity clinging to something else. New technologies, remarkable inventions, systems designed to promise safety and control and comfort. I watched crowds of people placing their hope, their entire trust, into machine and algorithms and human ingenuity, as if the very hands that had built the crumbling systems around them could somehow save them from the collapse those same hands had caused. I felt a deep sadness rising in me as I watched this, a grief that was not entirely my own, but one I somehow understood was shared with the one standing beside me. The angel turned to me, his eyes calm despite the chaos unfolding below us. "These are not random disasters," he said. "They are signs. Humanity has entered a prophetic season, one that was foretold long before this generation ever drew breath." As he spoke those words, I heard something else. A voice, deeper than anything I had ever encountered, resonant in a way that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, filling the atmosphere around me like thunder rolling across a valley. I understood, without being told directly, that this was the voice of heaven itself declaring truth over everything I was witnessing. The voice spoke of a shaking, one that would not stop at the earth alone, but would reach into the heavens themselves. It declared that everything built upon foundations that were never meant to last would be removed, stripped away, exposed for the illusion it always was, so that what remained standing would be the only thing that was ever truly unshakable, a kingdom that could never be moved, never be conquered, never be taken away. I felt the weight of those words settle over me like something physical. I understood in that moment that everything I had spent my life building on this earth, my career, my savings, my reputation, all of it belonged to the category of things that could be shaken. None of it was safe. None of it was permanent. And I began to weep, though I had no physical body left to weep with, because I understood how much of my life I had wasted chasing things that were never built to last. The vision continued, and what I saw next is something I will never be able to fully describe with human language, though I will try my best for your sake. I watched wealth crumble into dust right before my eyes. Vaults filled with gold and precious stones simply dissolved, turning to ash and blowing away like they had never existed at all. I watched massive government buildings, symbols of power that had stood for generations, crack apart from their foundations, their walls collapsing inward as if an invisible hand had simply decided their time was finished. I watched luxurious homes, mansions built by men who had spent their entire lives accumulating comfort and status, disappear into darkness, swallowed whole, as though they had never mattered at all. I watched stock markets, those glowing towers of numbers that the whole world seemed to worship, dissolve into ashes that scattered across the wind like they were nothing more than smoke. And I saw the people, desperate people, running from one collapsing structure to another, searching frantically for something, anything, that could offer them security. They grabbed for money that turned to dust in their hands. They ran toward buildings that crumbled the moment they arrived. They searched every corner of a world that was falling apart and found nothing that could hold them. But then, in the middle of all that devastation, I saw something else. A group of people, humble in appearance, ordinary in every way, standing together on what looked like a brilliant rock, glowing with a light that seemed to come from within rather than from any external source. Around them, the world continued to shake and collapse, buildings falling in the distance, chaos raging just beyond where they stood. But they were untouched. Peace radiated from them, a peace that did not depend on anything happening around them. They were worshiping. Some had their hands raised, some were on their knees. All of them wore an expression I had not seen on a single other face in that entire vision, a calm certainty that nothing happening around them could take away what they truly possessed. The angel spoke again, and this time his voice carried an urgency I had not heard from him before. God is exposing every false foundation, he told me. Human power cannot save. Political systems cannot save. Money, fame, technology, earthly success, none of these can provide eternal security. Only Jesus Christ remains the unshakable foundation. I felt those words pierce through me like nothing I had ever experienced. I thought of my own life, of all the years I had spent building on sand without even realizing it, telling myself I was being responsible, being wise, being a good provider, while never once building anything that could withstand the kind of shaking I was witnessing. The vision grew even more personal after that, and this is the part of my testimony that is hardest for me to share. Because what I saw next included people who called themselves believers, people who wore the name of Christ, but whose lives told a very different story. I watched countless individuals who had built their faith not on true surrender to God, but on comfort, on convenience, on a version of Christianity that cost them nothing and demanded nothing. When the shaking reached them, I watched their confidence shatter completely. I watched panic take hold of people who had spent years sitting in church pews, but had never truly given their hearts to the one they claimed to follow. Their faith had been built on the wrong foundation, and when everything around them began to fail, that foundation failed right along with it. But not everyone. I watched others, men and women who had walked quietly with God, who had not been the loudest voices or the most visible names, continue worshiping through the chaos with a peace that defied every circumstance around them. Their faith had cost them something over the years. It had been tested, refined, built patiently over time through real surrender. And when the shaking came for them, it found nothing to take, because everything they had ever needed was already secure in Christ. The angel came close to me then, and his voice grew urgent, filled with a compassion that broke through the awe I had been feeling, and replaced it with something closer to desperate love. "Do not let fear rule your heart," he said. "The shaking is not meant to destroy my faithful children, but to reveal what cannot be shaken. Tell them to listen to my voice while there is still time. Tell them to examine their foundation. Tell them to live holy lives. Tell them to serve me with reverence and godly fear." Every word he spoke felt like it was being written directly onto my soul, something I would never be able to forget for as long as I lived, whether that life continued for one more day or many more years. After he spoke those words, the vision of the shaking earth began to fade, and I found myself being drawn upward, higher than I had gone before, into a realm of light so overwhelming that I have no earthly comparison for it. I saw what I can only describe as the edge of a throne, radiant beyond anything I have ever witnessed, glory pouring out from it like a river with no end. I understood, without needing to be told, that I was in the presence of something eternal, something that had never once been shaken and never would be. I realized, with a clarity that has never left me since, that God's kingdom is beautiful, complete, and entirely untouched by the chaos consuming the earth below. History, I understood, was not spiraling out of control. It was moving exactly according to a sovereign plan that had been in place long before I was ever born. And then, just before I felt myself being pulled back toward my body, he appeared. I do not have adequate words for what it was like to stand in the presence of Jesus. Light surrounded him, indescribable, warm, alive. His eyes held something I had never encountered from another living being. Perfect love combined with absolute authority. A gaze that saw every failure of my life and yet held no condemnation in it whatsoever. I fell, though I had no body to fall with, overwhelmed by both the weight of his holiness and the tenderness of his presence at the very same time. He spoke to me, and his voice was gentle, yet it carried the same authority that had shaken the earth just moments before in the vision. "Do not fear what is coming," he said. "Fear only being separated from me. Build your life upon me, for everything else will pass away." I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain in that presence forever, wrapped in a peace I had never known existed. But I felt myself being pulled backward, faster and faster, the light around me fading into darkness until suddenly I gasped, my lungs burning as air rushed back into them violently. I opened my eyes to the sight of doctors and nurses surrounding my hospital bed, their faces filled with shock, their hands still moving in the motions of resuscitation. I had been gone, they told me later, for several minutes with no heartbeat at all. They could not explain how I had returned, but I knew exactly how, and I knew exactly why. Friend, I am not sharing this testimony with you to frighten you. I need you to hear that clearly. I am sharing it because I was given a message, and I have carried the weight of that message every single day since I came back to this life. The world you are watching right now, the instability, the shaking systems, the uncertainty in every direction you look, it is not random. It is not meaningless chaos. It is a call to wake up spiritually before it is too late. If you have been building your life on money, on status, on the approval of other people, on technology, on your own strength, I am asking you today to reconsider that foundation, because I have seen with my own eyes what happens when the shaking comes for the things that were never built to last. And if you call yourself a believer but your faith has never cost you anything, if it has only ever been comfortable and convenient, I am asking you to search your heart honestly today, because comfort is not the same thing as true surrender to Christ. If you have never given your life to Jesus, today can be the day everything changes for you. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to have your life in order first. All you need to do is come to Him honestly, right where you are. Pray this with me from your heart. Lord Jesus, I confess that I have built my life on things that cannot last. I am sorry for the years I spent without you. I believe you died for me and that you rose again in victory over death. Come into my heart today. Be my Lord. Be my foundation. I choose to build my life on you alone, because everything else will pass away, but you never will. If you prayed those words and meant them, I want to welcome you into the family of God. Please find a good Bible-believing church near you and get connected with other believers, because none of us were ever meant to walk this journey alone. The shaking is not meant to destroy God's faithful children. It is meant to reveal what cannot be shaken. So do not live in fear of what is coming. Live in the confidence of the one who has already overcome it all. Thank you for listening to my story. May God bless you and keep you standing firm on the only foundation that will never fail.